Throughout the history of the United States, there has been a constant struggle for equal rights between sexes. This struggle for equal rights ranges from the early 1800s, as seen in the Seneca Falls Convention, to the 1960s, as seen in books such as Betty Friedan's The Feminine Mystique. I feel that the notable leaders of this movement, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Betty Friedan, and Margaret Sanger, all deserve a monument in their honor, and dedicated to their courageousness to speak their ideals which went against many of the American viewpoints of the time, and to their successes in achieving equality between the sexes. Elizabeth Cady Stanton is the first of the notable women I feel should be included in the memorial. One of the first women's rights leaders, she spoke at the Seneca Falls Convention, and there drafted the Declaration of Sentiments. She addressed many of the problems with living as a woman in the United States at the time, including a lack of societal, political, and economic significance, and the complete lack of voting rights. The Declaration of Sentiments was a document which stated the goals of the attendees of the Seneca Falls Convention and the overall women's rights movement, including the right to vote, and reforming the negative distinction between women and men as workers. Susan B. Anthony was an outspoken women's rights activist and helped to introduce the notion of women's suffrage to the United States alongside Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and she also established the American Equal Rights Association with Frederick Douglass, another advocate for women's and blacks' right to vote. Together, Susan B. Anthony and Elizabeth Cady Stanton established the National Women's Suffrage Association, which fought for women's suffrage. These two women furthered the establishment of women's suffrage. Both died before the passage of the 19th Amendment, which guaranteed the women's right to vote. Rosie the Riveter is an example of women's rights activism during the 20th century, symbolizing the working-class woman and opposing the refreshed cult of domesticity, or cult of true womanhood, which was a societal viewpoint at the time which portrayed women as perpetual housewives, and that women were supposed to be in constant submission to the husband. Betty Friedan is also a notable leader. She published The Feminine Mystique, which had many women challenge the traditional role of the housewife, and was a national bestseller, and is thought to be the sparking point of contemporary women's movements, and is widely regarded as one of the most influential nonfiction books of the 20th century. Finally, a sister to more than 10 siblings, Margaret Sanger was an outspoken activist of birth control, boldly stating her ideals in a time when contraception was considered taboo. She helped establish the American Birth Control League, which created family planning clinics across the United States. She also succeeded in legalizing contraception in America. As you can see, Elizabeth Cady Stanton, Susan B. Anthony, Betty Friedan, and Margaret Sanger deserve this monument because of their boldness and courage to speak about what goes directly against the societal norm of the time, and their overall accomplishment of establishing rights for women.